Eddie Long again, and shout out to Red Light Crew.
Hey, you're one of 12 listeners of the Real Life Podcast.
Yeah, you know what? To find that better, I think the key there is... Zero cat. I just lost my train of thought.
Hello and welcome to episode 144 of Nation Real Life. I'm Tyler, your Jug. Jay's in here, Wanye's in here, no bagged milk, no Chalmers, because we have a special guest, and it's a Mary Brown's Poppin', brought to you by Mary Brown's and their bite-sized morsels of 100% breast meat, chicken-coated in Mary's seasoning and served hot, crispy, and so yummy. You can even choose Thai for a kick of sweet heat topped with sesame seeds. And our special guest is Mr. Shane Fennessey. He is an Edmonton-based filmmaker. He was a big part of Making Coco, the big documentary. See how much cleaner I am that we restarted the recording and I got a chance to do this all again?
I would listen to this podcast now. Before, no.
Yeah. My Red Bull just kicked in. Shane, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Real Life. Thanks for giving us some time today.
Hey, absolutely my pleasure. Happy to be here, guys. Big fan of everything you guys do. So it's it's great to be a part of it.
And we're amped up because we've been talking now for like an hour and a half, and I know like lots of good stories are coming. I'm like, oh, wait till he talks about this, Jay. You're gonna lose your shit.
Yeah, I've been listening so far. It's been good.
Mm-hmm. So you were involved with Making Coco.
That's right.
Which was I'm sure everybody listening knows, but it was a documentary about Grant Fuhr. And like to my knowledge, that's like the first big documentary made about the Oilers or an Oilers player, maybe other than the King's Ransom.
Yeah,
Boys in the Bus.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
Well, in the last 20 years, absolutely, 30 years. For us, Grant's book had come out a couple years ago. I don't know if you got a hold of that, but that was sort of the inception of like, okay, he's got a good enough story for us to do a 73-minute feature-length documentary film on this guy.
And it's amazing. Like I was fortunate enough to get to go to Rogers Place to watch it.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, I was glued.
Yeah.
And like the twists and turns and just I was like a lot of Oilers fans now maybe listening to the show, we were too little for the 80s Oilers, right? I was like, it was all before my time. So to see glimpses of that era through a professional lens of a documentary, it was just fascinating.
Well, you forget like how good those players were. You see the stats all the time, right? But how often do you get to see all that archival footage played?
I think there's like a weird almost resentment among Oilers fans of a certain age against the 80s Oilers because I think it's a double-pronged thing. We missed out on the good times. So I'm rattled because I'm like, well, that's fucking great that they're doing all of that when I was 4, right?
You got 06 though.
Oh, yeah, trust me. I'm still living on Fernando Pisani's joy he gave us all. But also I think there's people who are mad because you know, your era or our era now is so different than the era of those days, but it's still super interesting to just sort of get past the veil of like, we're mad at the boys in the bus for fucking up the 10s on the ice and see the story of them back in the 80s. It's such compelling content.
Yeah, I think the problem nowadays is stories don't have long enough to marinate. Right? Like Connor McDavid's got like 3 books out on him already, right? Like how many stories have been told about these guys whose careers aren't even over? With a guy like Grant, there's nothing done on him. So you got 30 plus years of that story to like marinate in people's minds and 5 championships. And then you look back and go like, holy shit, he got a championship on average 1 every 2 years for the first 10 years of his career. Like people forget that.
After watching the documentary, I was just like blown away. I'm like, fuck, that guy had a career.
Oh yeah.
Like outside of the success, like obviously like being an Edmonton Oiler guy, but obviously too young for this, but still connected to it. Just the second chapter and the third chapter of his career with the other teams and like some of the heroics that he pulled off.
Oh,
just being retold those stories because like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that, like that, you know, that game or that highlight, but like the story behind it and building all of it up. I'm like, man, this guy was like truly an amazing player, human.
Yeah.
Well, for him to do what he did at that point, like in his career, and then have the resurgence in St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
Like he was 34 years old when he broke the record for number of games played in the season by a goalie, total games and games started.
That part of the documentary where you talk about that and then they talk about the injury, like to me, that was something who, like you talk about how you were 4 years old when the Oilers were winning all those cups. To me, like that was even before my era, right? So for me to look at that and just be like, holy shit, like him playing that many games in today's NHL, that's more than fucking unheard of. And then with the injury and all the stuff that went into that, that was really compelling. Was there a part of it that when you walked away from the documentary, you were like, man, that wasn't maybe the part I was expecting to like grab onto me the most, but it ended up being like a thing you look back on as a highlight?
I think it's such a shock that Grant was such a warrior because he's such a low-key guy, right? Like the story about him playing golf the day before Game 7, right? It's like, oh, yeah, you played 54 holes of golf the day before Game 7. Why'd you play 54 holes? And Gretz says, I heard from the stall next to him. He goes, oh, I didn't have time to play 72. Like to a guy that easygoing, but also that much of a competitor as soon as you get on the ice, like it's such a disconnect that you wouldn't expect.
But yeah, to perform at that level, especially in the goalie position, you need to kind of have that like ice in your veins, like whatever. I'll play 113 holes of golf because I can't give a fuck because I give such a fuck. If that makes any sense.
Totally sense.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Write that down.
I will. I'll put a timestamp down for that one. Just to give people more context of some of the stuff you've done, let's rattle it off. Let's allow you to brag a little bit. What else? What are some other big things that you've worked on aside from Making Coco?
Okay, the hit list. So started off with Making Coco, the Grant Fierce story. Then we moved on to the Bailey Experience about Canada's golden medal 100-meter sprinter, Donovan Bailey. So that's on TSN. And we're just wrapping up post-production on Bisping, the Michael Bisping story about UFC Hall of Fame mixed martial artist and also the league's first British champion, Michael Bisping.
And you've done some stuff that's not sports as well, too.
That's correct. Yeah.
What about doing sports stuff like really draws to you? Like, why are you passionate about that? And like, what's kind of maybe the difference when you work on something else compared to when you get a chance to do a Making Coco or a Bisping story?
Working on something in sports is nice because it's everyone else's hobby, right? And for you to turn that into a business and be able to provide them with the content that they like to go to when they don't have bullshit in their life to deal with, their escape world, like that's really cool to be able to share that with the fans. Like I just worked on a short political documentary about foreign funding in the Canadian energy sector. And that's like, holy shit, the stakes are real in this. Like we're filming and people are getting mad at us for being on their property because they think it's an anti-pipeline documentary, and it's not necessarily a pro-pipeline documentary, but he thought we were environmentalist hippies, and he tried to get his gun and kick us off his land. And we're just like, no, like this is what we're doing. Let me explain it again because I must have done a bad job. And he's like, oh, I thought you guys were on the other side of this. That was the first moment when I had a realization, like the stakes are real here. Like you can't just like show the nostalgic footage of this player that everyone loved and have everyone clap at the end and stand up, right? So it's fun to have real stakes, but it's also fun to dive into like the things that you love and are your escape.
It's amazing when we were talking earlier. So this energy documentary dropped a week ago, correct?
Yeah. We did the Edmonton premiere October 5th and then 3 sold-out shows in Calgary on the 7th and 8th.
And online, it's blowing up to the tune of?
700,000 views as of today.
Wow.
In a week of a full feature documentary.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
That's off the chains. So when you're thinking about projects that you want to work on and stuff like that, are you coming at it from the idea of like, I want to be a producer, right?
Yeah.
I want to do things in sport and things in business. And like, how do you find new projects to work on?
Yeah, well, firstly, I want to be a producer because I'm not talented and everyone else on my team is talented. So there's that.
Oh, it's like being the boss.
Well, you
got to hire smart people to work for us.
You speak very well. You're very articulate. So let me pump your tires here for a bit. I think you got the chops.
But so we want to hear a funny. I was trying to bait you. That's what podcast term.
Oh, okay.
How'd you get into the movie biz?
So I got in the movie biz because I had worked in a couple other careers without a ton of success. But I quit one job and I was just bartending part-time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life.
That's the dream.
And a good, fun employed, as they say, right? And a good friend of mine, Michael Maxis, gives me a call one day and says, hey, why don't you get into the film industry? And I said, yeah, it sounds like fun, but like, what do I know about movie making?
When you were bartending, did you work at the Pint?
Never worked at the Pint.
Oh, where were you bartending at?
I did El Cortez, obviously,
Cortez, yeah, of course.
MKT, and then I've been local for about 4 years.
That's how you boys know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Of course. So Max is, who's a friend of the show.
Yes.
Who was a partner of El Cortez and then movie maker from Edmonton, calls you up randomly with the magic pixie dust of
start
Maxis,
making films.
Yeah.
And away you went.
Jeez.
Isn't that great?
I wish it was that easy.
But is that easy?
It can be.
Well, I guess that's kind of how the nation started.
Assuming, nobody phoned us and said do that. We phoned each other and said we'll do that.
Well, yeah, we said we should do something on the internet.
Yeah.
That's how it was all born.
Yeah. The first year and a half of the nation was just Jay and I talking to each other under assumed names in our comment section.
And people would just watch you guys.
Oh, there were no people.
There were
It
no
was just
people. It was
us.
just us.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
us. Yeah. And then the first commenter ever that showed up was Bag Milk, who you met earlier.
Yeah.
That was the first real human being we talked to.
Really?
Now he's our editor in chief.
Fantastic. So you just like were so desperate for people. You just come into the club. Let's
For
go.
sure. We're like, what do you do with you? You're welcome aboard. Yeah.
You want a job?
Yeah.
We'll give you a job.
Oh, there wasn't. It was
Whatever
years
it's like
later.
to keep him in the room.
Yeah, it was years later till we offered him a job. But I can really respond or identify with the idea of like it's fun to be in sports. It's fun to be in the business of sports. It's the job you have when you're little and you don't understand how the economy works. It's like, what do you want to be? Space cowboy.
Yeah.
What do you want to be? I don't know. Work in hockey. Like, what the fuck are you going to do? Invent a new kind of skate? You're not working in hockey. But for a select group of us that are very lucky, you can. And your hobby becomes your business, or your passion becomes your job.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you were asking me earlier, like, how do these projects come together? Like, how do you get to them, right? Like, obviously, there's a ton of stories I would love to tell, but they might not necessarily be ready at this point, or the person might not be accessible. So
Stories you like to tell in terms of like a film you'd like to make.
exactly. Yeah. So when I say like a story I'd like to tell, like our 3 sport documentaries have all been based off an individual, and that's been great. I'd love to tackle like a topic in sports, maybe like charting the player's performance / motivation when it comes to increasing contracts, right? Like how does a player's performance actually dip when he's got money in the bank and when he doesn't have to worry about going hungry anymore, right? That to me is super interesting.
I've never met an athlete that thinks about money rationally or even really values it. Would you feel the same way? Like they're always really weird relationships with money because they're so young getting so much.
Yeah, you know what, to be honest, like most of the athletes I know are sort of like the older generation, and those
Fair.
guys are a little bitter that they didn't get paid like the new guys did, right? Like I remember being on a boat with a couple of the old Oilers guys, and they were just like, fuck, like I was a 4th liner, and if I were playing now, I'd be making millions, you know, like, and back then it was serviceable, like it was livable, but it wasn't extravagant by any means.
The 80s Oilers, I think, are like a hilarious, just the snippets of stories that you get. It's a different time. Big money hadn't moved into the sport yet, right? So, and there was pre-social media and pre-smartphones and, you know, like that. There was advantages to playing in those days and making $200,000 that somebody making $4 million would be like, I wish I could play in an era where I could smoke during intermission and do other awesome things like that, right?
The one thing I remember, speaking of old Oilers and being rich or not being paid a lot versus now, but still, I think they did pretty good, relatively speaking. I remember Mark Messier used to roll in a Bentley.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
I have very few like memories of Oilers, but at the golf course, Messier rolled in a Bentley, and that's how I first ever found out about a Bentley.
Fuck, that's gangster.
Did you care more about the Bentley or Mark?
Obviously, Mark.
Oh, there's a photo of young Jay with the Stanley Cup where you've never seen a happier child in your
But
life.
my dad's like, that's a Bentley. So then that's just like one of those things that kind of sticks
Noted
in
in
your
my
brain.
log.
Yeah, no, now I know what a Bentley is. And now Mark Messier is always and forever associated with Bentleys in my life.
One of the other awesome stories that you told me we were just chilling upstairs before this was the story of seeing people on Instagram playing hockey near the Great Wall of China.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Because that was an illustrative story for me of like, I would see a photo of somebody on Instagram playing hockey next to the Great Wall of China and be like, and move on with my day. But you were like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And then it took you down a weird road.
Well, yeah, I was like 6 months into filmmaking, and I hadn't even made a film yet. And I was just like, okay, what's my project going to be? Because I'm working with all these other people, and I'm like, I want to have ownership on something, and I want to do something bold and ambitious that's never been done before. So it was like January 2017. I was just scrolling through Instagram and saw a picture of pond hockey right next to the Great Wall of China. So I found the photographer of that photo. And then I found who was in that photo. I discovered that there was this awesome like community of expats in China, like between Shanghai and Beijing, all who had like these beer league hockey teams and guys who would like move there for 6 months to a year to teach English and just fall in love with the country, stay there and be like, I miss hockey, so let's like find some other guys like me and drink beer and play hockey on the weekends. And so a year later, after I'd put together sort of like a proposal to an investor and put the team together, I traveled there for 2 weeks and went to Shanghai, Beijing, and Harbin, Edmonton's sister city.
Sister city.
I'd like to point out too, Harbin, as leading up to the trip there, I was told, it's some small sort of rural backwoods town in China. Yeah. 10 million people in Harbin.
But that's the way it is in China.
That's a hick town to them.
Yeah, that's their Rimby, if you will.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rimby.
Good pull, Rimby. Nice.
Thank you.
That's nice. Rimby's like, thank you, Jay.
Hopefully my Auntie Edna is listening.
Well, maybe we have a listener in Rimby.
We don't have any listeners, your Amtrak. You know that. What? Weird.
Well, that's a great time to pull that up because now we're going to hear from our good friends at Japa who pay to be on our podcast because of our listeners.
We totally have listeners.
Have you got holes to dig, earth to pack, and roads to build? Then you need to call Japa Machinery Group. Does your equipment need a service? You can't fix stupid, but here at Japa Machinery Group, we can fix everything else. With a full range of parts to keep your equipment running smoothly. Japa Machinery Group is a family-operated and Alberta-grown business. Here to help build a bigger and better Western Canada. Give us a call or visit us at japamachinery.com. Japa Machinery Group. Join the family.
If you have been on the fence about doing something with our good friends at Japa or purchasing or have been waiting to expand your fleet, now is the time to do it because it is the end of season sales deal right now on all their rental packers. You can find out more information at their website, but they got a ton of stuff going on right now. A ton of additional options as well. So if you want to buy or get going now, you don't need to pay until the end of the season. Great flexible options at their end of season sale. So don't forget to check out our friends at Japa.
When you say Packers, they own the Green Bay Packers?
I'm talking about things like the CV83S, which
That's not
starts
a
at
football
$70,000.
So Aaron Rodgers isn't on sale.
Guys.
Actually, speaking of Japa, I saw one of their fine pieces of equipment, the XCMG, on Calgary Trail and about just before the White Mud, doing some good work, looking in great shape. Shout out to Japa.
And that probably had their 90-day powertrain warranty.
That's why it was operating
Good job,
so
your
good.
Chuck.
See
You're
how
a
good I
pro.
am? Yeah,
You
throwing
are
those
good,
in here.
Good on you.
It's because I love Japa. 20% discount on all of the wear parts as well. So, but yeah, we're rolling along. Episode 144 of Nation Real Life. We have a Mary Brown's poppin'. Do not forget that on Mondays, it is Big Mary's Mondays, which is their hero chicken sandwich, a whole Canada grade A chicken breast cooked golden brown and served on a sesame seed bun with cool mayo and crisp lettuce, $3.99 plus tax. Also on their website, there's a coupon you can print off that allows you to get 2 chicken wraps for like $4. And I will admit I've done that 3 or 4 times in the last 2 weeks.
Well, I haven't had lunch today, and I was coming in hot to the podcast, so I'm already fighting starvation. So you're killing me here with all this descriptive.
With my great ad reads.
Yes.
They're fantastic. But our guest today is Shane Fennessey. He's an Edmonton filmmaker. He's done some great stuff. I think a lot of the listeners on our podcast would know him from the Making Coco side of things, but there's been a ton of other stuff. And I mean, everyone was fired up about this, but you have been giddy with excitement.
About what?
This conversation.
Oh, yeah, no, this is great. This is very exciting. Yeah. Well, I was pitching earlier, like if you come to me and you're like, I know how to make the TV talk and I can make movies about anything. I have a lot of ideas about very exciting things and we'll see how it goes. But just before the break, we were talking about how you'd headed over to China to shoot some content about the Chinese hockey program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like once I found that photo, I started digging into like the story of hockey in
You should
China.
be a detective. Like all the stuff you did to like get
A good
everyone in the
filmmaker
photo.
is a
I was
detective,
like, Jesus,
Exactly.
God, this guy's Jason Bourne.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I didn't get kidnapped there is probably a huge plus. Man,
Because of your spy training.
because of my spy training, because of some very top level connections
Excellent.
within the
Ooh,
Chinese
geez.
government. No, we you made me lose my train of thought now.
Yeah, come
Sorry.
on. Jason
no.
Bourne, when you started thinking about Matt Damon.
I'm just here to pump tires, man.
So I'm going to give the spoiler alert on the Hockey in China documentary. It's still yet to be made, but we found out that hockey's been played there for over 100 years. This cool sort of enigmatic history of Russians coming down into the northern part of China and seeing them play field hockey and go, hey, that's cool, but have you tried it on ice? Strapping on the skates, banging that puck around. And from there, yeah, it grew for a little bit in China, and actually in the 1950s and 60s, there was I think 40,000 hockey players in China. And then after the Cultural Revolution, it sort of shrunk, and China got more interested in developing economically and all those things. But
100 years. So 100 years of so they must have established their like. Did you see like a style of hockey that they play like that's different than us? Like is
Tiger style?
hamster style?
Hamster style.
Yes. They promised in year 5 they would never play hamster style again. But yeah, like did they have their own like flair or anything towards hockey or interpretation of it?
So it depends what level you're looking at, right? Like if you're looking at kids hockey, what you have is a lot of North American coaches or European coaches going over there. And because they've got so much money, they pay these coaches to do one-on-one skills-based training with the players. So all these kids have unreal shots and dangles, and they got good one-timers, but they're not playing any team systems. They're not passing the puck, utilizing their teammates. And then, of course, when you're talking about the pro league, you've got guys coming in from all the other leagues around the world. So, yeah, they've got some Chinese players, but chances are those are like repatriated guys like Zach Yoon or Brandon Yip, Corey Kane. Like those are 3 guys who played in North America and now are Chinese nationals. They got to grow the team somehow.
So they're just trained as individual weapons.
Exactly. Assassins on the ice.
There was a guy who played at the University of Alberta for the last 3 years. His name's Jason Fram, and he went and is playing for the KHL team in China now with like the sole intention of being eligible for the Olympics in Beijing.
Oh, very cool. So he's going, he's like Nigel Dawes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Excellent.
So for the film buffs, and especially like old school documentary buffs, there's a film called Thunderbirds in China, where the 1974 UBC Thunderbird team went to China and played an 8 games friendly series against the Chinese national team. This was the first time in most of China that these guys went that they had seen a single white person. They went to Harbin, they went to Beijing, they went to Shanghai, and the Chinese government organized 18,000 people to come watch their practice.
Wow.
It's online on the National Film Board of Canada's website. Just type in Thunderbirds in China and you can watch an hour-long doc. And these guys are like hosers. They're straight out of Slapshot. The long hair and the glasses and the documentary crew's like on the bench with them and in the dressing room. Like it could be a real movie. Like it could be a dramatic movie, but it's all fact.
That's so sick. The other documentary you dropped, like being from the film world, knows every documentary in the world. Western Swagger, is that what you said it was?
Yeah, Western Swagger is about the CFL sort of like lineage back in the 70s and 80s with the Eskimos.
And about like being from Edmonton and having swag.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the teams that were winning here gave us our swagger essentially. Like before that, like why were you proud to be from Edmonton? Like what did you have really? Right? Edmonton's always had, the reason it's called the City of Champions is because we have a really good philanthropic spirit here in Edmonton.
Wasn't it because everybody drove into Evergreen Trailer Park after the tornado in '87 and
helped out?
Yeah,
exactly. Like people in Edmonton, it's always been about the community, and people have always been willing to help out.
We met at the Pint on Saturday post game, about 57 shots in for your boy here. And I'm wearing this, or the other hat, the City of Champions hat. And he's like, I have a podcast called City of Champions. I'm like, my hat says City of Champions. She's like, yeah, I know.
It was Saturday at 1 a.m.
Yeah, I'm like,
by the way.
look at my hat, right?
Well, and that's why like it's more than just a road sign into Edmonton. It's like a state of mind. It's
a way of life.
It's a way of life. And that's why, for our generation, it's important that we keep that story going, because Edmontonians are good people and we do great things. So that's what it's about. That's what you're celebrating when you do that. So like guys like yourself and us, like we just want to keep that, keep it going, keep the narrative going.
I think pride is like a really important thing, right? And if you live in a society where all you'll hear a lot of times is just people talking negatively, right? And people like negativity sells. Yeah. You have to have a counterforce of positivity saying like it's awesome to be from Edmonton. I feel like in the last 5 years, and when did you move back to town?
So I moved here first time in 2011, and then I moved back in 2014.
Did you see a difference in the city between 2011 and 2014, or was it still too close together?
I think in the first time I was here, I didn't really see the city. Like I was pretty insulated. I was working for the World Juniors. I was kind of there every day and had so much going on. When I came back, I was working in a company. I was bartending. Like I was really I got more out into the community. And so since then, I've sort of felt like, wow, Edmonton's got all this to offer in terms of a network and in terms of people wanting to help people. And I really think I don't know, I haven't seen that anywhere else in the world, and I've been to a lot of places.
We don't realize how good we have it. Like the new thing we do is we bring like people from Europe to Edmonton for their first NHL experience or because they're Oilers fans. And just the reactions that they have to how well the city puts on for them is like they're just blown away. And it's just like it just goes back to like who Edmonton is.
For my money, like Edmonton's one of the best places in the world, right? We're lucky. We mildly successful on the success spectrum. We can live wherever we want. I like it here. It's very safe. It's not corrupt. The police are on your team, which is something we take very much for granted, that like when you get stopped by the police, are they on your side or aren't you? Remember a couple of years back, we had a Canada Day party and I had some friends from Mexico who were up to do some work down there. And the police drove up to our block party and I went and talked to the guy. I'm wearing a McDavid jersey. I'm in a similar state as when we met on Saturday. And the police officer gave me a pack of stickers. Yeah. I came back over. My friend from Mexico was like, what just happened? Did you have to pay that officer to leave? I'm like, pay the officer? He gave me a pack of stickers. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that like you're that friendly with police officers here that they'll just kick it with you.
Oh, yeah.
That isn't the case everywhere around the world, right? Yeah. And I think people, it's natural if you're younger to feel like your hometown's holding you back, right? I've met people from all over the world who were like, I just had to get out of Manhattan. It was too small. You're like, what? Too small. But if you're fortunate enough to return later on and feel like a connection with a place, that's very rare, right? Like you can talk about your expats over in China, right? Like people who move to a foreign country, you got to give them a lot of credit because they completely have to rebuild their lives. And a lot of them never, ever feel anchored anywhere else again because they're like, oh, and I live in Shanghai and during Canadian Thanksgiving, we didn't really have anything and stuff like that. And you kind of lose that, right?
Well, the simple like practicality of not having like aunts and uncles or grandparents or parents to look after your newborn kids, right? Like it's really isolating to try and do that. And I think a big factor of Edmonton's sort of community mentality is also these cold ass winters you guys have here and we have here. Like,
we have here.
I know now I'm a
City
we
Champions.
finally. Funny enough, I was actually born in Edmonton, though I grew up in Vancouver, so I can always say we. But it's certainly something about that hardship that really makes you appreciate the good times, right? Like you talk to people in LA or like farther south Texas, like they don't have seasons there.
Yeah.
They're like, I like life just kind of is one big long drag, right? There's nothing to look forward to. Us, like, the weather starts to suck, but we get hockey. Like, here we go. That's awesome.
Well, but the thing this is the thing we need to learn is as Canadians, as Northerners, is actually how to celebrate the one season that we don't like. It like they do in Scandinavia, and we've talked about this a few times, like how they embrace the cold and how they build a lifestyle around it, and that way every season you got your thing that you love. Like, I'm super pumped. I'm going skiing this weekend for opening at Nikiska in October.
That's dope.
That's fucking dope.
Can't do that in San Diego.
Can't do that in San Diego. I'm fucking shocked.
Take your son.
I'm just excited I'm doing it. The nostalgia around that's unreal.
It's interesting your point about seasons, right? Speaking of San Diego, I was there for a little while a couple years back. I think I was maybe there for 2.5 weeks. Every day was exactly the same.
Yeah.
It was beautiful,
but
it was like almost like a virtual reality world where the world's just stuck to summer.
Truman Show kind of.
The sunrises to the
cold
sunsets.
environment.
Everyone was really nice to me out there. Just like in terms of what you said about celebrating the fact that you're Winter City. Have you guys ever seen pictures of Harbin's Ice Festival? It's the biggest ice festival in the world. Okay, so you know our like Edmonton Ice Castle that they build every year?
Yeah.
This puts that to shame. Like that's like a kid's ride, and then you go to like Universal Studios and get on the real rides. Like they have, no joke, several football fields worth of ice sculptures, like that are 5 and 6 stories big. Like they've got palaces and temples and like I think they had the Statue of Liberty there one year.
It made entirely out of, wow. Can
Ice
we put that
blocks.
up when we're doing some socials? That's rad.
I'll put it up. Wow.
So, and also, by the way, when we were there, minus 35 degrees and 80% humidity. It is
Oh,
cold. They got it worse than here.
That's bad.
See, when I think of China, I don't think of like a northern climate.
No.
I think
People
of,
think smoggy Shanghai,
Yeah.
right? Or like old school Beijing.
so they're up there. What is that weather like? Like humidity plus cold equals frown face for me.
You know what's amazing? They're out there enjoying it. Like we walk down, it's called Pedestrian Street. Also, like where you see all the Russian influence. You see like Russian style that like look like what's the building in the Kremlin? Like a church that looked like the Kremlin, and half the street signs are in Russian there.
That blew me away, Jay, saying that half the street signs in Harbin are in Russian.
Yeah, it's this very weird intermingling of cultures. But people are walking down. They sold ice cream. We had Russian ice cream at minus 35 degrees. The great thing about it is it doesn't melt.
Yeah,
you can eat it at your own pace. You don't have to rush through it. They're skating out on the river. They have this massive river that freezes over. They like it. They get out there and do shit. I think if we had more infrastructure that was conducive to that, where you could like pop in stores and go to coffee shops, like get out of the cold for 5 minutes or 10 minutes while still like walking about, I think we would do that too. But other than White Ave, like there's not many places in town.
Outdoor patios were actually illegal in restaurants and bars until a few years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
In Edmonton.
In Edmonton.
Why is that?
To keep us from freezing to death? I have no idea. They just reversed it.
Yeah.
So Little Brick, where we're recording from today, we have a year-round patio.
There's some weird archaic restrictions in all types of permits and codes and liquor laws that need to be kind of like updated to like 2019 standards, so we can like at least try to copy. Like, a lot of the stuff we can't do that they do in Europe that we think is so cool because they're doing it outside and whatnot. But like we got to kind of like cut through that crap, which takes time because it moves at a snail's pace.
Yeah,
because it's all
we're
political.
so close-minded, right? Like
I think part of it too is like we're not exposed to people in northern climates living differently. So the first thing you want to do if you're from Edmonton when you go on vacation is go somewhere hot. You're like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I need to sit in a beach in an all-inclusive where for $1,500 I live like a warlord for a week. I'll return very hungover and be done with it. When we started traveling, we went to Europe, we went to Iceland, and people were like, why'd you go to Iceland in November? We were like, why would we go to Iceland in November? Because it was cheap.
Yeah.
You see, though, during the winter in other countries that people do get on with it, and they have a good time.
Absolutely.
but we're learning. We're getting there. So we're going through that renaissance.
I think so. I think Edmonton in the last few years has changed a lot. And like, I remember back in the day, I'd drive with my grandma and she'd be like, do you remember when that used to be a grocery store? And I'm like, no, grandma, I don't remember when that used to be a grocery store. But I'm doing that now. I find when I'm driving around, like the other day I saw a tower being built downtown that I didn't realize was being built downtown. And like that would never ordinarily happen because I'm downtown all the time. I'm paying attention to what's going on. But I think there honestly is like 7 or 8 towers.
Like
going
you're
up
gonna blink and the whole like cityscape is just gonna look completely different. And it already is, but like it's happening that fast. It's kind of sneaky, but it's not. So it's kind of interesting to see all the changes that's going on. I also just you gotta see this. Well, actually, no, I'm not gonna tell you what I got because it might be a gift. Never mind.
All right.
Wow.
Moving on from that.
That is unbelievable podcast material.
I think we established we love Edmonton. I kind of want to go back to Making Coco because you would have had to have interviewed some pretty fucking cool people in the making of this, including Grant Fuhr. What kind of like crazy stories can you tell us?
What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, that you can tell us that kind of happened from behind the scenes about some of these people you got to meet.
Well, it's funny because it's hard to tell who's going to be a good interview, who's not. Like they're all pros, they're all ex-players, right? And we had our highest percentage of an interview used. So usually we'll interview someone between like 45 and an hour and a half, just depending on who they are and what the director wants to use from them. But when we had Wayne out, number 99, his PR person or his manager said that, okay, you've got 19 minutes with Wayne. We're like, 19.
That would be more than enough.
That's an odd number of minutes, but okay, we'll take the 19. So anyway, he was supposed to show up at 10 a.m. So we always get there 2 hours early to set up because we get the cameras and the lights and we finick until the director and the cinematographer are happy. So it's 9 a.m. and Mr. Gretzky rolls in an hour early. Well, thankfully we have an unbelievable crew.
Did he think it was an hour later, or was it just?
Nope. Just the world runs on Gretzky's time.
Wow, sure does.
When you're Wayne, the world molds and warps itself around you.
Well deserved.
So our director wasn't even there. He was just getting out of bed, right? Like he's like, I'm on my way. Like, can you delay? And we're like, we can't fucking delay. We've got 19 minutes and he's here right now. Like, let's go. So our producer, Adam Scorgi, hopped on. And he's like, make sure you get a picture of me interviewing Wayne. I'm like, way ahead of you, bud. I gotcha. Right? But I had the wherewithal to lock his team out of the room. So we kept him for about 28 minutes, 10 minutes more
Smart.
than 9 minutes more than we should have. And I think we used probably like 7 or 8 minutes of Wayne, which is crazy for like a 28-minute interview, right? So, I mean, just, there's a ton of cool stories like that.
So does he roll in with a crew?
Depends where he is. He's got a security guard with him most times.
Oh, wow.
I think it's got to be hard to be Wayne Gretzky in 2019.
Terrible. Awful. Very
Everywhere you go, like you're basically prime minister status. You go to I remember he was going to watch his son play minor league ball in Quebec.
Yeah.
There he was signing fucking balls and signing jerseys and stuff like everywhere he goes. Do you think he's given, I always think about this. Has he signed his name more than any other person ever?
It's a good question.
I don't think any person ever.
No.
Who would have signed more autographs than Wayne Gretzky?
There was probably a soccer player.
Yeah.
Or something with like
Pele?
Pele, yeah.
Is the autograph thing big in Europe too? Like, is that
I don't
part
know.
of the culture? Because sometimes things that we think are like worldwide are really just like weird Canadian things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, like Poutine.
Should be worldwide. Absolutely should be.
It's mind-blowing that it's not.
I remember reading in his book that he doesn't cross the T in his name, and he's estimated over the course of his life it saved him like hundreds of gallons of ink because he doesn't cross the T in Gretzky and shit.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
He must have nightmares of just like a reoccurring nightmare of just doing autographs.
One time I remember I think it was the King George came to Canada on a tour, and he shook so many hands that he got like crippling carpal tunnel and had to go around shaking hands left-handed.
So I guess pound it
just go the
out.
fist
Pound it
bump?
out, man.
Oh, this is 1915. They hadn't invented the pound yet.
Yeah, my king pounds it.
Yeah, no.
Or just a hat tip, maybe? I don't know. There's other
A
options.
bow?
there.
On those
Like
days,
chest
everybody
bump.
would line up.
Chest bump, yeah.
But with Gretz, like everything is planned, right? Like his schedule is like, like it's all like lined out and he works by the minute. Like when you're a guy like that. And I made a mistake. So a couple weeks ago, when we were playing the Kings, I was sitting in the skybox at Rogers Place, and I was with my girlfriend, her brother, and my mom was in town for over Barrell's premiere. And so we were in the intermission, standing and grabbing some food, and then Steph's brother goes, I think Wayne just walked up to the set, like the next level up. I'm like, no, he doesn't watch the game from up there. He doesn't come up here.
He has a
watches
gold
from-
skybox. Yeah.
He watched from Daryl's sweep. And so 5 minutes later, lo and behold, I see him walking down. And so I wave to him and he kind of waves back. And I'm like, oh, I should go say hi. So I walk over.
This is just very, very impressive to me at this point in the story.
How do you do such a thing?
This is terrible. I went over. I was like, hey, Wayne. He's like, hey, Shane, how's it going? Like, congrats on making Coco.
Hey, Shane, how's it going?
Wow.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
not even a flex. That's just fucking unreal. Okay.
But he had a security guard there who I know just from being around the team and having like worked on Making Coco. So he's a great guy. And anyway, I spoke to Wayne for like 10 seconds. And within that 10 seconds, it was like zombies towards the like one last living person on the face of the earth. Just people, there's Gretzky, right? Like, and everyone was up and like the security guard was like, oh, we got to go. And he's like, oh, sorry, I got to run. I'm like, yep, see ya, bye, get out of here.
Wow.
So like, that's what it's like to be Wayne Gretzky. If you like get pulled off your itinerary for 10 seconds, like that could fuck up your day.
People underestimate, I think, especially in 2019 with every camera being a smartphone and shit, how annoying it must be. Because like, I've never interacted with Wayne Gretzky. I don't imagine I ever would. The closest we ever got was we were at Rogers during the playoffs, and Wayne was walking through, and there was like a phalanx of people around him.
And Semenko was walking behind him.
Oh, damn it. You got the end of the story in the beginning. Oh, well, here's how I was going to tell the story. So Jay's like, he's in front of me and he looks back and he just like goes white as a ghost. Cause like normal people like us don't go hi Wayne and get a hi back, but he's like, Gretzky's there. And I turn and look and I locked eyes with Semenko accidentally and all the color drained out of my face. Cause he's still in bodyguard mode. Like, don't you fucking look at Wayne.
Yeah, he was in security detail.
He was
for
a
sure.
security detail.
Always had his back. That's why I was like, oh.
It's amazing how all those guys like are still so tight and they still like being friends with Gretzky now at this day and age has got to be crazy because like he's been living in this fishbowl since he was 1978.
Yeah. And it's worse now than I think it was like 10 years ago because that phase between now and like when he stopped coaching in Arizona, he kind of like went dark for a bit, right?
Yeah.
Till the Oilers brought him back as a VP. But yeah, I can't imagine. I hope I never have to deal with that.
I think he had been sick. Like that coaching gig thing was like he probably didn't want to do it because there's some circumstances behind the scenes there with like that ownership stuff. That, like he was probably just like pissed at the game at that point.
How hard is it to coach if you're the best player that's ever lived, right? Like, oh, you didn't see that guy that you could have passed behind your back through three guys? Like, how did you not see him? Why didn't you make that pass?
What would you do? Well, I would have gone out and gotten 215 points. That's what I would have done.
I'll tell you who could do that. Leon Draisaitl.
That pass in
an
OT was
unbelievable
sick.
pass.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
But he
Make it
also, me being Mr. Negative, why didn't he shoot the puck on one of those 2-on-1s?
Yeah,
He had the lane, man. He could have snapped it home.
I know.
He's got one of the best fucking snapshots in the league, and
That
he's
one,
always
yeah.
trying to
Because you've
force
got
it
the
to
best
Connor.
player that you're about to pass.
I
on.
know
Knowing
it's
that,
tough. There's
maybe
like
that.
a hierarchy there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's normally Draisaitl's the trigger man. So there's like backwards world there.
I wonder what it's like for a guy like Connor McDavid to look at a guy like Gretzky and be in his proximity a little bit more. And is that like a warning of what the future can be where you're like, how old is Gretz now? Like 57, 56, somewhere in there?
Yeah, almost 60 probably.
And like so fucking famous, he can't even walk down the street. Like, is that what Connor's future is going to look like? Tough to say, right? But it's got to
Really
be
tough to say.
mildly alarming.
Yeah,
what are your
but-
thoughts on Connor?
Well, like, firstly, Connor's great, right? Obviously, as a player, as a person, he seems to have everything.
Does he know you on a first name basis? As
No,
well?
he doesn't know
He
me.
hasn't
Yet.
gotten to that level yet, has he?
No.
he doesn't
no.
deserve it.
He's not Wayne.
I have served him one time at the bar. He came in after he got injured last year, after the season, and it's amazing. Like, he just goes out and does things in the city. Like, I think that's really cool that he can do that and he doesn't get harassed, right? Like, I was kind of shocked. Like, you think, like, you know, you get harassed everywhere you went, but people in this town are respectful of that.
When I worked at Jersey City, the year he broke his collarbone, the rookie season, he came in, I would say 3 or 4 times over a month span, just holding
To
hand.
buy Connor jerseys?
No, he came in.
He
once,
probably gets a deal at work.
Once he looked
knows a guy.
looked at hats. Once he looked at Blue Jays stuff. The other time he just kind of came in and they browsed and they left. But I remember I walked up to him. I was like, "Hey man, like, can I help you with something?" He's like, "No, just browsing." And there was like other people in the store who were just like going about their business, looking at Oilers shit. And Connor McDavid's in here,
But quietly looking. I'd be
Yeah.
like, oh shit, Connor's
Where
here.
are
What
the hidden cameras, right? Like,
right? And then he leaves, and I was like, "Did no one else just see that Connor McDavid was in here?" And like one of the customers was like, "No, he wasn't. Shut up." I was like, how did no one see this? But you're right. He almost does have like an ability to just kind of float around nice and quietly.
Well, and if you're not used to seeing guys like that too. I remember one time I was looking for a dress shirt, and I'm like at the wall of dress shirts downtown, the dress shirt depot. And I'm like, these all look the same. And the guy beside me goes, which one should I get? And I look over, and you know when you think you're talking to one person, but it's not the person you think you're talking to? That's what that guy had with me. Oh, yeah. So I'm looking, what kind of shirt should I get? And I look over, and it's the Nuge. And he just signed his deal. And I'm like, I don't know, Nuge, buy all of them. You just got signed. And he was like, well, this is like, you could tell he was like, I don't want to talk to this guy. See you later, buddy.
Yeah, get one of each. How about that?
It's amazing, though, like the impact that money has had on the game, right? Like you think about how the Northlands Coliseum cost $45 million to build, and the scoreboard in Rogers Place cost $50 million. Right. And just, when you sign, when there's so much downside risk now for players being on social media, I think it's a lot harder for them to open up. It's a lot harder for them to move in normal society than it was 25 years ago.
Well, everyone's got to be so risk averse because there's so much money on the line, and every second of content costs so much money, right? Like, so they don't ever take chances because, like, what if it doesn't work out? Then all of a sudden you've wasted a $15 million spot on TV, right? Like back to Grant for a second. Like when he got the suspension from the cocaine use, I don't know if you guys remember this, but he went on a talk show that had call-ins right when he came back and took calls live on air from fans about using cocaine and his suspension. Like, there's no way a player would do that nowadays. It would be
There's no way an agent would let his player fucking do that.
It blew my mind.
Maybe Arby's.
Leto is probably like pushing for that.
Yeah.
It blew my mind in the documentary that he had that like drug use or whatever you want to call it, but he played 73 games that year or something like that.
No, he played 73 in St. Louis. 4 years
the
later.
year that he had the problem, how many games had he played that year?
I can't remember.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot, and they didn't have Ranford at that time. Who was their backup?
Yeah,
because Ranford came later, right?
Would have been Moog.
Okay, yeah. So, but anyway, the fucked up thing about that was like he had been to rehab and been clean a year when the NHL found out and suspended him, and they originally wanted to do a lifetime ban. And then Craig McTavish
with no drug policy,
no proof,
no
Slats
precedent.
is like, do you guys have any proof? Like, yeah, well, he came out and said he did it. It's like, okay, so I guess we're accepting people at their, at face value then. I would never fly today.
Flash forward to today. Well, that would never fly today. Kuznetsov, man.
Yeah.
That dude had a video of him with cocaine on the table, tested positive for it 3 games. Right?
Seriously? Is that what happened to that? Because I remember the picture, and he denied using it, right?
Denied using it, but then the IIHF nabbed him on a positive test from the World Championships, and the IIHF has suspended him for 4 years, and the NHL gave him 3 games.
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Classic.
Go Team Canada.
Oh, yeah. There's so much money's involved, right? Yeah, exactly.
Well, who was it? Remember Backstrom in
Sochi, when he got suspended for the gold medal game because he took like too strong of an Advil or some shit. Like,
no, it was like allergy medication or inhaler or something.
Yeah,
right?
and
he got suspended for the gold medal game, and he's like your best center.
What's that sport documentary though, where the guy's talking about the Russian doping program?
Icarus.
When they're talking about how there's like the underground corridor between their office and the KGB, and they gave him the tamper-proof thing for pee, and they're like, "You'll never get this open." The KGB guy walked back in 5 minutes later, bang, it's open. Fuck. What about like? Well, think about now. Isn't like every Russian athlete basically suspended forever? Like what?
The OAR,
the Olympic athletes of Russia.
Yeah, the Olympic athletes of Russia.
That's just for one Olympics.
No, I think it's.
I think they got to keep doing that. I would have to look it up, but I want to know when. I don't know when exactly that suspension runs out.
Oh, I thought it was just for that Olympics. Wow.
Yeah, I thought it was just that Olympics too.
Maybe. I don't know. When you watch something like Icarus or whatever, like a documentary that's in your field, do you no longer have the ability? Like, I'm the same way when I listen to a sports podcast or sports radio. I'm always like, that sucks. They shouldn't have done. Ooh, that's good. I wish I would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Are you like that too? Or are you just like always kind of glued in? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and so an example of like it's not really a sports doc, but it's about an athlete, like Ronnie Coleman's documentary. Have you guys watched that? Ronnie Coleman, like,
is it the weightlifter?
Yeah, like 8-time Mr. Olympia bodybuilder, like the lightweight, yeah, baby, you know that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, like his doc, like terrible production value. Like in some of the interviews, you see like the crew in the reflection of the window, right? But super compelling story and a really great character. Like he's an awesome guy. So it was a good doc to watch. But I'm like, man, like if we had their budget, like we could have done so much better with this, right? But then there's
Holy crap!
You guys got a
doing
woodpecker in here? What's
Someone's
going
doing
on?
construction in our studio right now.
Is that the
Ironically-
nation pet?
Yeah.
It's the permanent renovation of the podcast.
Boys,
studio.
I bought a jackhammer. You want to hear it?
Let's do it live.
It's the new button on the Roadcaster.
Yeah,
Roadcaster Pro.
Yeah, the Roadcaster Pro, the pecking.
We paid for the Pro, Jay. Come on.
That has to be frustrating though, right? To like watch something like that and be like, man, it's so good, but fuck if I could have gotten a crack at that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like the one that would kill me if someone did it before us is Gretz. Like if someone got his doc before us, and like believe me, I would love to do his. That would kill me. Unless they did a great job.
Is there anything that you've ever heard? Like, if there was one documentary I'd want to see, it'd be a Wayne Gretzky documentary. It'd be 7 days long, and there'd be like breaks to pee. Have you heard anything about anything other than King's Ransom being?
No, it was Gretzky 2000. What's that? You don't remember Gretzky 2000?
No.
I haven't watched it, but I know it exists. It's a documentary done on him. And I don't think it was like as comprehensive as Making Coco, but like it's so 2000s. Like you see the interviews from it, and he's like in some like beige room with like a beige suit and like a white undershirt. Like it's very dated, but that's like the only thing on Wayne at this point. Right?
What's your favorite? So obviously everything you've done is amazing, and it's your favorite. But what's your favorite sports documentary that you haven't been involved with?
Favorite sports doc? You know what? I really, really liked both the Carter Effect and the AI Allen Iverson documentary.
Carter Effect was sick.
Yeah, and I'm not even a basketball guy. Like I have zero interest in basketball as a sport unless the Raptors are about to win it.
Then I'm so hardcore.
Yeah.
Well, then I make money bartending, so I really like that. But no, those both were really powerful docs, so I like those a lot.
I think when we were talking about this earlier, like having context for people, we were using the example of Chris Russell, and we were talking about how a former writer at Oilers Nation decides he hates Chris Russell and pumps a shitload of I hate Chris Russell and here's the math behind it why. If there's no counter argument to that, people make up their own narrative. If there was a documentary about Chris Russell where it shows his grandma and his grandma's like, one time Christopher took a shot to the face and his eye popped out, but they popped it back in and went and scored the winning goal, people be like, oh, Chris Russell isn't so bad. But if you don't have that content, there's no counterpoint to that, right? And I think that a lot of these guys, they have such interesting life stories, but it's all kept behind a wall. It's all kept behind a guard, right?
Do you think you could have saved Jeff Petrie?
Well, I don't know. That bastard had it coming.
Well, did he?
He was the original Tom Pody. I don't know. And that's a valid point, right? Like, you know, it's an interesting study about Oilers fans and like, why do they turn on people and why do they turn on players and railroad them out of town? Number one, it's because they're so invested in the team. Number two, it's been grim around these parts for a better part of a long ass time now.
I mean,
I don't think people are railroading Jeff Petrie out of town if the Oilers are good.
Yeah.
I think they're just looking for something to hang their hat on and be like, it's that guy's fault because the team, and you remember this, they're never coming out with any cohesive plan or anything like that, right? And so in the absence of that, when people are that wired in, they're going to go negative.
Yeah, it's exactly right. You know, like it's both our greatest asset and one of our greatest curses as a fan base is that we're so passionate. When times are good, there's no place better in the league. But when times are bad, the knives come out, right? And it can't be easy to be a player here in those dark years.
I think that although we have the argument that the Oilers are the best fans in the league, I don't know about that, but they're very good fans.
Well,
but
what makes a good fan?
Well,
and that's a whole nother thing, right? What does make a good fan?
How emotionally invested are you? I sold my TV to go to Game 6 of the 06 Cup run because I wanted to watch that, not my TV, right? I would consider myself to be a good Oilers fan because I do shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Jay just went to Russia and met Yari Curry and took a photo, and you can tell by the size of his eyes, he's a very good Oilers fan in that photo because meeting Yari Curry is very interesting. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to do those things. Yeah. But like you hear about the people who are like, I drive in from Saskatchewan and go to every game for 40 years when for a lot of the time the biggest cheer of the night was for the SO animated car on the scoreboard.
Right.
Those are great Oilers fans.
Yeah.
Right? They're not consuming the content the team is putting out. They live and die with that.
Yeah, and that's unwavering passion. But like what also, in my opinion, makes a good fan base is knowledgeable fans, right? Like people who can deconstruct actual like plays on the ice and understand what's going on, understand the context of a season, understand that like a guy had like a terrible year last year because his father passed away and he had an injury and maybe it was just a rough, 365 days for him and let's hold out hope for this year.
But that gets back to context, right? If that information isn't being widely shared, I'll give you an example. Milan Lucic's father passing away, right? That's a horrible thing to happen to anybody. It's never brought up in the narrative. And yet Zach Cassian, being a former alcoholic, is going to be brought up in every single interview that guy has until the end of time. They just love to beat that over his head. Because the walls around the players and the teams are so high, you don't get to see these guys as human beings.
Yeah, but there's a difference there. That's a redemption story that can inspire and give people hope, whereas like your father passing away is just kind of like, that's just a downer.
Yeah, but then do you maybe go like, well, maybe that explains why Milan Lucic is in the mood that he's in. If my dad passed away, I'd probably be pretty pissed off too. Yeah. I don't know, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, I think humanizing people and giving them like a bit of a longer leash, like you're talking about, and saying like maybe things will be better last year, except for Jeff Petrie, who really had it fucking coming. No, he didn't. You know, I think that there's a certain level of like, if they're in the absence of good storylines, people are going to cling to negativity.
Yeah. Yeah, so pump them with good stuff, right? Give them stuff to be hopeful for.
Well, both have a conversation, but I want to go back to, you don't know if you think Oilers fans are good fans. I think we're fucking unreal fans.
We are unreal fans, but we make it difficult for people to be Oilers.
But I think that just goes back to being knowledgeable.
And it goes back to being knowledgeable. Also, it goes back to being constantly kicked in the dick year after year after year after year.
Buddy, I'm on the Oilers side fan. Don't kid yourself. But I'm just saying, but when you're Jeff Petrie and you go to the store and people are like, "Fuck you, you don't penalty kill properly," like that. Connor getting lipped off outside of Joey's. That's not helpful.
That's insane.
That's not helpful.
I'm ashamed to be to call that guy an Edmontonian for how he fucking
and
acted.
Players talk, right? And when shit like that happens, and you know that if you go to Edmonton and you play there and you go to the 7-Eleven, people are going to lip you off while you're getting a Gatorade.
But how often does that actually happen?
Yeah, and how often is it that? And how often is it like, holy fuck, we fucking love you?
Yeah.
I think it's more than you'd think. I think that when the Oilers are having a bad season, I think a lot of them cop a lot of shit. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, he's coaching a team, and there's an Oilers kids on it. And at the beginning of the season, you'd never see.
I think everyone knows who you're talking about what players he's coaching.
Why?
We've talked about Chalmers coaching Mike Smith's kids.
I literally listened to this walking down the hill to come here today.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. I didn't remember that you said the name. Sorry. Jesus, fuck your Chuck. What are you, the goddamn Supreme Court? Anyways, he says that from the beginning of the season, his wife wouldn't talk to any of the kids on the team or the players, and she was very reserved because she didn't know how she was going to be, handled by people. And now that they're good, she's a lot more relaxed, right? That's very unique that your husband could have a job where you feel like you can't go talk to the other kids on your sports team. That's hard. That's a city it's hard to play in. Sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's probably every Canadian market, maybe outside of Vancouver. I don't know if Vancouver's intense as it is here, but
no, definitely not.
If you're in Winnipeg or Toronto, you're going to have that same kind of attention for sure.
No question. But this is why people would rather, like Luongo would rather go to Florida where no one gives a flying fuck what he does and he just waves going down the street to his neighbors. There's a lot of players who don't want the pressure of playing in a market where people live and die with it.
Yeah, no state income tax helps in that decision too, though.
Yes, for sure. But you have to live in Florida. There's like a 50-50 chance someone at the local Starbucks is going to have an alligator and a shotgun while they're waiting. Like, Florida would be a wild-ass place to live, and no thanks.
Yeah, but does the good outweigh the bad, I suppose, right? Like, does the times you get the admiration from the fans outweigh the, like, odd time? Like, I mean, Connor got it. Like, how many guys actually get it, do you think?
I think I'm kind of on your side with this. I honestly wonder how many, like, there's keyboard warriors on Twitter or who will sit in the stands and be like, fuck, Horkoff's fucking terrible. But I'd actually wonder how many of them have the balls to, like, when they see the guy in public, actually walk up and be like, hey man, I genuinely think you're dog shit. Go fuck yourself.
It's usually alcohol is involved in that situation, and if you're a player out at 1 a.m., like you're putting yourself in that position to get chirped, as you are as an anonymous individual being at the bar and like bumping into someone. Like, you're putting yourself at risk being out in a place where there's a lot of drunk people.
Or maybe you're like us, so we were at the pint and somebody just brought over a tray of shooters and said, these are for you. And I was like, I will have all of them because that's how I like to get down at 1 a.m. Full throttle.
And then if someone walked up to you and like, hey, you're Wanye, I fucking hate Oilers Nation. Well, then.
Nobody does that because I made up a fake name and no one knows what I look like. Checkmate.
By the way, I still smell like Jack Daniels. I just want to point
We're living good. We're 7-1-1.
Where's your Jack right now?
It's okay. 7-1-1. Time to live a little bit.
We're getting towards the end of our 1 hour here, and you know how much I like to keep things on track. But you just mentioned 7-1-1 for the Oilers. You're an Oilers fan. I threw this question out to our social media. What would you say right now, and you'll both probably say 100%, but I'll ask the question anyways. What do you think is the percentage chance that the Oilers make the playoffs? I have it at 70.
I have $400 on the fact that they're going to make the playoffs at 3.7 to 1. Thank you very much.
Where'd you get 3.7 to 1?
You gotta know the worldwide books, man. This is a bet through an Australian gambling
Does that
company.
mean you win 1,200 clams?
Yeah, 1480
Australian dollars or Canadian?
Aussie dollars, but
They're the same,
that
pretty
converts.
much.
Yeah, it's
1 to
about
1, yeah.
par. Yeah,
So what do you think is the percentage chance you are getting that money in your account?
100%. I've already spent it.
Oh, okay.
I have a $40 Stanley Cup 2019 bet from Vegas that I made, posted to my wall in the office. 100% they're making the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician, but I'm going to give it about 80% based on how they play. Now, the wheels can always fall off, injuries and things, but if things continue the way they're going, I think 80%.
I think like last night was a good example of the shift or the change or the new era of the team. That game easily could have been 6-0 Jets. But, everyone just kind of bunkered in, even though like the Oilers were playing weird, but they just kept staying in it and putting pressure and, trying to create opportunities. Like that was a game last year that they would have just folded and just gave up in and lost 6-0.
Yeah, and that's actually something I said earlier today. In today's NHL, any team can win any game when they're playing good. The difference between the high-end teams and the general crap teams are the high-end teams find ways to win when it's not 100%, when they're not playing good, when they have an Adam Larson out with an injury, someone steps up. And that's, I think, what's most encouraging about this year's Oilers teams is there's been a lot of games this year where it's like, fuck, this is not going well. And 7 times now, 8 times if you include last night, we've gone, holy shit, they got a better result than we thought they were going to get. And that's what's really encouraging to me. But I still say 70%.
I think outside of what the Rangers game and the Islanders game were the two only games that you're like, okay, we're running over these guys. Every other game was virtually a come from behind win. And I remember being at that LA game where they had four 1-goal deficits and kept coming back. I'm like, this feels like 2016. Like this does not feel like 2018 and 2019. This feels like 2016 because we're just chipping away. We just keep going.
Sorry, I get so excited. And like during that game, anytime they were down a goal, you knew and felt that they were going to come back.
Exactly.
Because of how they're playing. It's completely different what we're witnessing.
My plums.
Me plums. Oh, it's good times, man. I'm telling you, 7-1-1. We stole that point in Winnipeg. That shootout was fucking whack, but whatever. Who cares? We got a point.
The ice was bad.
Is there anything worse than a shootout loss 1-0? Like nobody gets a point. Like it's just such a bullshit game.
It is sad.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like
gross.
it's like, and something's up with Connor. Like last 2 games, he's had his
quiet.
He's had his 4 shots. He seems to be screwing up the little things that he never used to screw up. And I don't know if it's like, still coming back. I don't know if it's just 2 random games, but
he's getting worked a lot too. They're playing him a lot. I don't know. I think it might just be 2 random games. I don't like reading into things because like any other player goes 2 games without a point and you're like, well, whatever.
But Connor doesn't.
No.
Connor doesn't. And he looked a little off yesterday. But the whole team, like making terrible. Even Leon was a little offset until he made that unreal.
Oh, that pass.
Long bomb backhand pass.
That was like, just trust me, you're going to get it on your tape. Like, it's not going to look like it's coming to you, but it's coming.
Like, if Connor scores that, that's like the play of the year.
So, yeah, that's definitely in the play of the year conversation. And, like, how often is a pass in the play of the year conversation? That's how sick that thing was.
Oh, God. But because, Connor did it last year when Trisato went basically, like, far blue line to far blue line and, like, across the ice. Yeah. Basically tape to tape. It's just...
This is why I can't get on board with people shitting on the team right now. Like, there was the year I convinced myself Eric Cole was going to score 50 goals and we were going to the dance, right? And like now I'm like, people are shitting on the Oilers. I'm like, did you see that they had 200-point players last year? Like, we're not convincing ourselves this is Cam Barker hockey that's going to be Norris shit. Yeah. This is like unbelievable hockey that's super exciting.
Yeah. It's been fun. As we wrap things up, Shane Fennessey, you're an Edmonton filmmaker, an Edmonton-based filmmaker, I should say. Is that the right way to describe you?
Whatever you want to call me, man. I'll be it.
Oh, cool. Okay. Anything
Wayne
else?
Gretzky's bestie?
Yeah, you have Wayne Gretzky's cell phone number. That's how I'll introduce you in the bio.
We'll tweet that out, right?
Yeah.
You do?
As I remove my phone from the table, so you don't kill me and use my face to open it.
That's okay. I already went on the deep dark web and have it.
Anything you got coming up that you want to promote, that you want to plug? And
well, Making Coco, I know we spent a lot of time on it, but it just came out on iTunes October 15th, so you can get it there. We're going to be doing a Fuhr jersey giveaway, announcing it in the near future, so make sure you follow us on all our social media, which is just at Making Coco, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Over a Barrel is out right now on YouTube and Facebook for free until October 31st. When does this come out?
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Today.
Go vote if you haven't voted already.
That's a nice thing to say.
Yeah.
It's going to go up tomorrow.
Okay, well, I hope
you're
you
not gonna
voted
do
or
that
else
today,
you're
or
dead to me.
There was 2 guys and a goalie put out on the Nation Network of podcast today.
Those guys get everything.
Maybe next year.
Can we call this one the one where the guy hammered a hole through the wall in the podcast?
Like,
Can we bring
someone
him
is-
in here? Can we say hi to him and just see, like,
We should
what are
interview
you
him.
building?
the funny thing is that we were like, "Can you please hurry the fuck up and finish off the basement?" He was like, "Yes, sir." And then he kissed down like, but not today though.
Yeah.
Like, now that this podcast studio is active, it's just busy down here,
Yeah.
right? And there's always going to be people down here doing shit. So whatever.
It's bumping. But we really appreciate your
Yeah,
time
this
today.
is
This was
awesome.
Yeah, thanks,
fantastic.
guys. This has
We
been
had a ton of-
great. You guys are awesome. Like I said at the start, I wasn't pumping your tires. Like, I've genuinely been a huge Oilers Nation fan since 2011 when I moved to Edmonton and wasted a lot of company time reading your articles. So it's been a blast.
You ready for this, Jay, to close? Hopefully, we do something together. Wink.
That would be amazing, and I think people should keep their eyes open.
Their eyes and their ears. Wink.
Throwing in a lot of winks at the end. Big shout out to Shane Fennessey for joining us on today's podcast. Jay, Wanye, I'm Tyler Rumchuk. Episode 144 of Nation Real Life is over.